There's the white, there's the brown. Just side by side each, side by side, right? So that's the general texture. It's you know, it's soft and it's just good, easy to make, homemade bread, both very good. Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and today I'm in the kitchen and I'm going to make some bread, but this here bread, which I've not made before on the channel, is a very convenient, easy, quick, simple bread, and it's also sort of a no-knead bread. You have to stir it a bit, but it almost simulates what goes on inside a bread maker without having to buy the bread maker, which you're going to throw away in 5 to 10 years anyway, right? So you just need a bowl. So, you know, and I'm using the simplest equipment you can imagine. A teaspoon, a tablespoon, not even the special measuring ones, and a bowl, right? So what are the ingredients? We need 3 cups of flour, 1 3/4 cups of water, I like a heaping teaspoon of salt. You can just use a level teaspoon of salt. Salt gives the bread a nice flavor. And a level teaspoon of yeast, good yeast, whatever yeast you can find. So let's get started here. We start with our water. If you want to have sort of perfect temperature, lukewarm water, boil some water in a kettle and put 3/4 in a container. I went a little bit too much there. Let's put a bit back. No, too much the other way. 3/4 in there. And then fill it up to 1 3/4. That's 14 ounces for you imperial types. So you put that in the bowl, and this is so easy to make that I'm actually going to make two batches right here. 14. This one's graded in metric, imperial, everything you can imagine, ounces, cups, you name it. All right, so that's a total of 14 ounces of water, fluid ounces, 1 3/4 cups of water, 3/4 cup of hot water, and a cup of cold water. All right, there's our water. Now we're going to put in our salt, or like a heaping teaspoon. You know, I just give it a couple taps, right? If that's too much salt for you, don't use so much. You need some salt or the bread won't rise right, and it just tastes better with some salt in it. The one on the left here, I'm actually going to make a molasses bread. You don't need to add sugar to make bread, but just in case, but molasses bread's nice. So I'm going to use not a 1/4 cup, like 1/8 of a cup. If you put too much sugar when you're making bread, it messes the bread up. The bread goes weird on you, which you don't want. So I'll just let that sort of sort itself out there. All right, so I think it's almost dissolved out of there. Let's use a spoon to get the last of it. You can just, I would normally just eyeball it, just for the sake of this video. But you know, it's about, let's say 2 tablespoons of molasses. You go above that, and you start running risks of your bread just not rising right. Okay, now before I add the yeast, just to make sure this is not too hot, I'm going to add my flour. Now I've got 2 kinds of flour. I got whole wheat flour and I got just white flour, plain white flour. If this is your first time ever making bread, I would just use plain white flour, okay? Because plain white flour is the easiest bread to have success, or the easiest flour to have success with when you're making bread. If you're going to start adding in whole wheat or other kinds of flours, I wouldn't go much more than 1/3 of that. So that's what I'm going to do here, because I just find the best rise, you get the best success, the best balance of, you know, the body of flavor that the whole wheat flour gives with the softness and fluffiness that the white flour gives, right? So for each of these, I'm going to put just 3 cups of flour. I'm going to put 1 cup of the whole wheat. Okay. And then 2 cups of the white. Now notice I still haven't added the yeast. So right now, each of these has 2 cups of flour and the water and the salt, no yeast. And the reason I like to add the flour before I add the yeast, while it's still quite liquid, is just to make sure that if it's just the case that my liquid's a bit too hot, You just never know with these things, right? Should be okay, but anyway, by adding the flour in, I'm sort of tempering the water. I'm bringing some of the heat and, the temperature of the flour is going to reduce the overall temperature of this mix, okay? Okay, so that's still quite liquid. It can be poured, right? Okay, this is the stage where I'm going to add the yeast. I keep my yeast in the freezer. You should too. I'm just going to put a teaspoon in for each one. As level as I can get it by eyeball. Just sprinkle it across the top like that. I'm making 2 batches because it's just this is so easy to make. 2 batches just makes better use of, you got your oven running. So why not put 2 loaves of bread in instead of 1, right? The work is not much different. I've stirred that a little bit. Okay, I've done my work there. This one here, I'm going to stir that to bring the yeast in. Maybe 20 stirs, that sort of thing, right? I always think 10s, 20s, 30s. I try to remember things like that. Now remember, there's only 2 cups of flour in each of these, so I need to add 1 more flour. Well, 1 more cup of flour for a total of 3, right? I find this works out just right. And once you add the third, let me bring the camera in here so you can see what's going on. When you bring in the 3rd cup of flour, you'll notice it stops being liquid and it becomes more doughy. Now, this dough is not dry enough that you could knead it. This recipe is so easy to make because you don't have to roll it out into the counter and knead and knead and knead and knead and all that sort of stuff. There's no mess. It's all in the bowl, right? So all you're doing here is just incorporating it until all the dry flour is mixed in with all the wet mixture. Right, this one's done. Using the same spoon, right? This is the ideal bread recipe to teach, a young person going off, making it on their own, because you don't need anything other than a spoon and a bowl, right? It's very easy to do. Fellas, if you want to impress the ladies, learn how to make bread. It's a good trick to have up your sleeve, right? And if you want to save money, learn how to make bread, because bread costs like, $4 a loaf. When you make it this way, it might cost 25 cents, 50 cents a loaf. And that's factoring in the electricity of your oven, right? Especially when you make 2 loaves at a time. All right, so that's the sort of, the consistency, the texture. See how it's falling off the spoon like that? All right, so this is a lot wetter than a typical bread dough recipe, but it works. All right, so that's all we need to do for now. I've mixed this up. It's nice and warm, and it's warm in the house. Today it's about 24 inside the house, so I don't really need to do anything special to incubate this. I'm going to leave this for an hour and a half. I'm going to go out in the garden, do some gardening, come back, and do the next step, all right? Just a quick note before I go out in the garden about flour. If you're going to be making a lot of bread and you want to save money, flour can get expensive, but you can save. I'm not going to show you the brand of this. I don't get any money from anybody for this stuff, but buy a 20 kilogram bag. That's like 40 pound bags, or give or take. More than that, probably 45 pounds, right? But anyway, 20 kilogram bag of flour. Buy it in this quantity. This bag costs 20 bucks, right? I can make a lot of bread with this. If you eat bread all the time, you're going to go through it fast, especially if you make homemade bread. One of these loaves barely survives a decent breakfast in my house, right? So it goes, especially the brown bread, it goes fast, right? If you're going to be making a lot of bread, buy a big bag once you get good at it, because you're going to be making it all the time. Using this recipe, you're going to want to make it all the time because it's not a pain to do. So we'll see you in an hour and a half. All right, so I've been out in the garden. Actually, it hasn't been an hour and a half. It's been like 2 hours because I lost track of time, but it doesn't matter. So you can see that these have risen appreciably since the last segment, right? So they've at least doubled in size, maybe tripled in size, right? So both of these breads, one with the molasses and the one without, has risen, right? All right, so here's all you got to do at this stage. Just take your spoon, which I left right in there, and just stir, all right? And that's all you gotta do. Stir about 20 times. 1, 2, 3. This is like kneading, right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right, that's all I need to do to, activate the gluten. I mean, in effect, we're kneading this. This is kneading. Okay, it's just like a very lazy, easy way to knead the bread, right? I'll do the other one now. All right, just get it going. This is exactly what your bread maker does. A bread maker does, as far as I understand it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right, done. So now we're going to let it rise for another hour, hour and a half or so, okay? This is all about just improving the quality of the bread, the softness, the texture, and all that sort of stuff. Now, if you wanted to be, let's say it was the evening and you came home and you made supper and you put the bread in the bowl and you let it rise once like we just did, and you were at this stage. You could put this in a greased bread pan and stick it in the fridge and leave it overnight. And then the following morning, after 10, 12 hours or whatever had gone by, following morning you put that in, and I'll show you how to cook this, but you could literally put it in a pan, put it in the fridge, leave it overnight, and cook it the following morning. That's one way to do it, right? You just put it in the fridge overnight. Or you can do what I'm about to do. Just let it rise a second time in these bowls, and then put it in these, okay? Which is what I'm going to do because I think it does a better job. Okay, so stay with me. We'll be with you another hour or so, hour and a half. Basically, once you can see how much these have gone down compared to where they were when I came in, right? So yeah, we'll see in about an hour and a half. You look at the bowl. So you can see where it is right now, but based on the little bits and the pieces of stuff that are kicking around, you can see where the height was before, right? You can see where it had risen to before. So we're just waiting for it to go to that height again, okay? If you do that, you just get better bread. You don't have to. You can pan this up and let it rise for an hour and a half and stick it in the oven. We can pan this up, stick it in the fridge overnight, let it rise for like 10 hours and put it in the oven. Do it either way, right? But today I'm home, got the time, got other things to do. So, look how little time we spent actually making bread. Most of the time it's just waiting for things to happen, letting nature take its course. And that's why I keep going back to bread making. I mean, I know it's a gardening channel, but you're growing something, right? Just very, very quickly. So, yeah, we'll see in about an hour and a half. I'll let you know exactly how long it was for the next step, okay? Stay with me. All right, so it's been about an hour or so, maybe an hour and a half. I don't know exactly, doesn't matter. Hour and a half, close enough. So these have risen again, right? And now it's time to put them in the pans. So again, I'm going to give these each, I'm going to knock them down and give them each a stir, okay? Same idea as before, vigorously, counting to 20. All right, that's done. See how much of the volume comes out when you knock it down, right? All right, let's do this one here. Again, just using simple spoons. One. For me, it's about basically your arm's kind of blown out after that, right? You could go at a slower pace, whatever, right? But anyway. All right, so now those are both fully kneaded. Now it's just a question of greasing up a pan. I got some, butter here, that sort of thing. You just use whatever you got. There's lots of different things you can use. But this here is like a vegan margarine because I can't handle dairy. But you use real butter, you use lard, you use Pam, use whatever you want to use. I like to use my hands and really rub it in. And I like to use these old-fashioned black metal pans. I just find they do a great job pulling in heat to themselves. They don't seem to stick if you grease them properly. And I just like the feel of my hand on it. I know everything has been fully coated. All right, so now it's just a question of putting the dough in the pan. This is a great way to make bread if you don't like the idea of having to, there's a bit of a skill to kneading bread, and I've shown how to do it in other videos. And it's not that hard, but it takes practice. And it's also messier than doing it this way. Everything's contained, right? Just move it around, pan like that. This is just cleaner, faster. Now, fully kneaded bread and all that sort of stuff is a wonderful way to make a bread. You can do it that way. But this is just a very practical, convenient way to make a bread. If you follow the way I've done it here in this video, no one will be disappointed in what you've done. I guarantee. Right. Give a little bit of a shake like that. Okay, now you're going to let that rise for about hour and a half. I let it rise till it's, basically above the profile of this pan. Alternatively, if this is late at night and you're tired, stick it in the fridge, and stick it in the fridge for 10 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, and put it in the oven the next morning. By putting it in the fridge, you drastically slow down the speed that it rises at, right? But if you're going to leave it out at room temperature or on some incubated type thing like I've shown before, you put it in the oven, put a pot of hot water in the bottom, close the oven off, just leave it like that for a couple hours. That's a good way to get it rise. But anyway, we'll see in about an hour and a half. These should be ready to go in the oven at that point in time. All right, so it's been about an hour or so, and this has risen. The dough that had the molasses in it rose a little bit more. You can see it's sort of above profile. It's maybe half an inch above the rim, right? And it makes sense because it's got more sugar in it, right? And the one with no sugar at all, just flour, yeast, and salt, is just a little bit above the rim, okay? So if I was just making this, I'd wait another 15, 20 minutes to let it rise a little more. But this one's basically, you don't want to let it rise much more than that. It'll spill over the sides and it'll just sort of use up all of its lift. There's sort of a sweet spot for timing when you put these things in the oven. This one has to go in now, so I'm putting them both in. It's close enough, they'll still turn out fine. All right, so all we do is we just, I got a cold oven here. I'm just going to turn it on 400. And I'm putting it right in, okay? Not letting it heat up, just putting it right in like that. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is it's going to be in the oven for an hour like that. The first half hour, it's uncovered. In the second half hour, we put tin foil on the top, the shiny side down. Get a piece like this, you can see how I sort of folded the edge overs and that sort of thing. That just allows you to use it multiple times, right? So this has been used many times, right? But yeah, just put this over the top of the loaf, and the whole thing's going to have an hour from when I turn the oven on to when it's done. And this is at maybe I think I'm like 100 meters above sea level here, so you're going to have to adjust that up or down from where we are. So normally when you cook bread at a temperature like 400, it's done in 40 minutes. But because this one has a higher moisture content, it has to be in a little bit longer. And it's in so long that if it's uncovered, it won't burn, it just sort of overcooks a bit on the top. So the solution is just putting this little thing. I can still breathe, the moisture can still get out of the bread, but this just keeps the crust from getting overcooked, over browned, right? Too crusty sort of thing, right? So yeah, 30 minutes from now, I'll put this on, I'll give it another 30 minutes, and then out it comes. We'll see you then. All right, so that's been 1 hour, half an hour uncovered, half an hour covered. Let's pull these things out and have a look what we got here. Rid of these things. All right, so we got a slightly better rise out of the brown bread, but not much different really. But I just thought I'd do one without any sugar or anything in it, just to show that you can. And of course, there's things you can add to bread to change the texture and flavor of the loaf. You can put oil or butter in with it. I've heard of putting egg in with it, but that can get a bit dodgy depending on, you know, the risk of salmonella and stuff like that. Anyway, that's the trick. I'm not going to cut into these right now. I mean, a lot of people, there's a lot of bread videos where they pull the bread out of the oven and cut it into it right away. Don't do that. As much as you want to, it'll be easier to cut into and it'll taste a lot better if you give it a few hours to sort of off gas. You know, generally I'm going to cut into these probably in about 3 hours just to finish filming the video and show you what the texture of the bread looks like. But normally I'd leave these out until, what is it right now? I'm in the throes of making supper. It's around 5 o'clock p.m. I would leave these out right up until I go to bed. And then at bedtime, I would put these in plastic bags, some kind of container, airtight container, and leave them overnight and have them the next day. They really need to sit a while, right? It just improves everything about the bread. That's the best way I can put it. The flavor, the texture, and everything like that. When it first comes into the oven, they're quite hard, right? You can hear that, right? They're very crusty, which is nice. But they're much easier to cut into the next day. You know, after you've let this completely cool down, you put it in a plastic bag and leave it for, you know, overnight sort of thing. And then the crust is not as hard and crusty. I mean, it's nice to have a hard, crusty crust sometimes, but there's other reasons you might not want that. So anyway, we'll see you in a couple hours and we'll cut into these and have a look at what we're dealing with. All right, here we are. It's the next day and it's been about 24 hours since I last filmed this. The brown bread didn't survive the night. Someone got into it. I'm not going to say who, but he's about 6'4". Anyway, I'll cut into each of these and show you what the texture looks like. The white and the brown. All right, so there's the white. There's the brown. There's sort of side by side each. Side by side, right? So that's the general texture. It's you know, it's soft and, you know, it's just good, easy to make, homemade bread, both very good. I mean, I already tasted the brown bread is, well, it's more sweet because it's got sugar in it, right? But remember, this white bread is 30% whole wheat. That's why it's not super white, right? It's got a bit of color to it. And we'll start with the white here. A little bit of butter onto it. Yeah, just a good simple amount of bread. I can't stress how important it is to put no salt in your bread when you're making bread. Behaves better, it's more predictable in the rise. Also just tastes good. Just brings out the flavor inherent in the flour. It's hearty. Even with only, 1/3 whole wheat, it's still, it's softer if you just go with all white flour. And even with 1/3 whole wheat, If you're looking for a little more body in the bread, you'll get it. Now the brown bread, which I like. Yeah, you can taste the molasses. You can taste the sweetness. If I wanted to make raisin bread, I would have done the exact same thing I did here with the molasses, but added half a cup of raisins to a loaf. I have a lovely raisin bread. It's that easy. Anyway, I'll stop stuffing my face here to just finish up the video. That's homemade bread, a no-knead version. There's a little bit of stirring, a little bit of work, but it's a fraction of the work of a conventional bread where you have to, knead it and roll it out, and it's a much messier cleanup and so on and so forth. But we still get the benefit of doing a double rise, right? So that just adds to the overall texture of the bread. So yeah, maybe give that a try, and maybe you'll become a person who makes bread all the time and enjoys the benefits of that, the good flavor, the hominess of it, and also saving a few bucks. So I hope you found that interesting. If you please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden, have fun in your kitchen. Thanks for watching.